We've got the Series 80 dryer all opened up. We removed the upper panel, we hinged it back. That allowed us to take out a couple of screws here to pull off the front panel. Disconnected the belt, got the drum out. And that allows us to get into some parts that really make your dryer really work. And that is your electric motor. We're going to go over how to clean that up. This idler wheel. We're going to go over how to clean this, how to change out these coils, and how to change out the igniter and the support rollers. So first thing we'll do though is we're just going to clean up this. We're just going to vacuum, get this looking a little bit better inside, and we're going to work on cleaning the motor. So we don't have a lot of lint build up here, which is great. I think it's a pretty new dryer. This might only be a few years old, but any lint you can see, you want to get rid of it because it's a hydrocarbon. It's little fibers of polyester and cotton mixed with oxygen, and if they have an ignition source, they're gonna burn up. Usually they burn up really fast, and they have like a flash fire, and they don't catch other things on fire when there's a dryer fire. For that to happen though, you have to have a big buildup of this lint. Sometimes when we open these up, there is a lot. I mean, it's just caked on. There's a huge flame that occurs inside the burner tube when the dryer is running, and that can be a source of ignition for all that buildup. And again, probably don't have a problem unless there's so much material that you get a huge flame and it starts to burn some of the rubber and other pieces, and that can cause enough heat to spread to the structures of your home. So pretty rare, but it's a good idea to open these up like we did and clean them up about once a year, and you can get rid of all this accumulated dust. So you can use this to clean. Part of the dryer motor that you really want to get clean is this part here. These are the fins that keep your dryer cool when it's spinning. So sometimes you get lint buildup on the fins. Good to clean that up. There's a part in here called the centrifugal clutch, and as it spins, it shifts the motor to another set of coils to let it operate at a higher speed, and they can get stuck if they're full of lint. So good to get your vacuum in there, or your brush, whatever you're going to use. I like to keep a little paintbrush. This one's a little dirty, but keep a little paintbrush with you, an old one, and it can be a good way to get off some of the dirt too. This has an ability to get in there a little bit better than a vacuum can. So these motors are actually pretty easy to, not that expensive. Put a link in the description if you want to order one of these. And typically you don't have to remove these or replace them for probably, oh man, probably about 15 years. What could happen though is that if you try to spin this by hand, it should be really easy like this. It's a good motor. But if the bearing right here or the bearing in the back, it's kind of corroded, then when you try to spin it, it's almost impossible. You might even have to use a wrench. So if you run into that, it doesn't mean you have to get a new motor. What you can do is just spray in inside here, inside the bearing, maybe some WD-40, and then use a wrench and just start turning it back and forth, and the bearing may free up, and then you'll be okay. Again, if you can just turn it by hand and it keeps spinning, you're good. If you turn it by hand and you let go and it stops, that means there's too much resistance from a bad bearing, and the motor will tend to overheat and it just won't work out. So that's when you need a new motor. That's kind of how you can tell. But This one's doing great. So if you can't turn it, even after you do the WD-40 and use a wrench, it's still tight, then you should replace it. So these idler wheels put tension on the belt and don't usually need to replace these unless they break. They come out pretty easily. You can kind of wiggle them out of the mount here and pull it out. The way you put this in, if you want to put in a new one, let's clean this real quick. Is you push this one in first, and then push in the back end. So you go in, then down. That locks it in. So the other thing you could use on the motor is some canned air. That's this stuff. Get this at a Home Depot or a lot of hardware stores, but you can just squirt air in there. And that can get into areas that the vacuum or the brush just aren't going to get. And again, maybe once a year you could do this. Keep everything running good, then turn it a little bit. Other thing you can do is use some electrical cleaner. Get that also like at Home Depot. Put a link in the description below for Amazon too, but this stuff's pretty good. You can spray this here. It also comes with a little straw where you can get it more focused, but getting it in, turn it a little bit. Mainly getting it where the stator meets the coils there. Trying to get a good connection. And a little more vacuuming, and then we're going to go over how to change this set of coils. Okay, so we've got the motor cleaned up really good. Got the cabinet cleaned up. Let's go over how to change these guys. So these have two electrical connectors. I'm going to get these off. Just gently pull back. That one comes off the bottom. This one's a little smaller on the top. Use this flathead screwdriver to help me get off this ridge. And I have one Phillips head screw I got to pull right there. Alright, let's pull out that one screw. Lift up, and this comes right out. We'll put a link in the description below to get a new one of these. They're pretty cheap. What they are though is a bunch of copper wire. Spins around, and when these get 110 volts coming into them, it creates a big magnetic field that lifts up. That magnetic force lifts up on a pin, lifts up and lets gas flow to this one or this one. And when these get tired, when they get older, power comes into them, but they don't create enough of a magnetic field to lift up long enough to let gas keep flowing into the burner. So when these things activate, you get a flame in there. It should go for about 2 to 3 minutes, right around that, and then should realize the proper temperature, and then it'll shut off. But when these get weak, what happens is there's still voltage coming in here asking for the valve to stay open to create more flame, but they're so weak that the spring tension inside here is stronger than the pull of the magnet, and it closes prematurely, and the flame only lasts like a minute, so your dryer doesn't get hot enough to really dry the clothes. And the sign of that is, you open it up and it's taking longer and longer to dry. That's either this is wearing out or your dryer vent tube is getting clogged, or a combination. I think the dryer vent tube being clogged is more common, but I'd say at about the 5-year mark, it'd be good to change these out because they're really easy to do. So when you put in the new one, same thing, you just put your little Phillips head screw in before you slide them in, because it just makes it a little bit easier. Get that one screw. There is a different type of a valve that has something very similar to this when they're a little bit older. There's two of these. They're not connected. There's one here and one here. They're both round. Same thing, they slide on. They have a bracket that comes up over, and the screws are actually located here. That's a different style. So if you have that one, we'll put a link in the description below for putting those coils in, but they're done in kind of the same way. They're just not connected like these. Put these down over these stems. Go ahead and use the Phillips head screwdriver to tighten it. Got it. Okay, and we're going to put these power connectors back on. So one of these has two terminals. Goes with this one. Just take your time, kind of wiggle them on in. And this one has three. These have three terminals. Wiggle them on. Got it. So we got the motor done. We got it cleaned up. We've got the coils done. These are called primary and secondary coils. Another thing that could happen though is you may have a worn out igniter, and the igniter glows red hot, almost yellow hot. And when the dryer senses that there's a very strong hot element, they'll let the gas flow, and that acts like a match to light it. But when the igniter gets worn out, it doesn't get as hot. If it doesn't get hot enough, it never opens up this valve to let gas flow. So you might even look in there and you can see the igniter glowing, but you never get ignition. That would be most likely it's time for a new igniter. So to replace it, it'll be easy. We're going to separate this modular connector. We're going to take out this screw right here and we can get the whole assembly out. Let's do that. Alright, so to get the igniter out, we're going to separate these two. Should be able to pull them apart, but if they're kind of stuck, you could put something underneath here to give you a little prying pressure to get those apart. I'm going to get out this screw right here, and this is a 5/16, and I'm using this angle tool to get into this tight spot. But you could come in here with a little crescent wrench. You could come in here with a pair of pliers to get at this guy. It's just a little faster. Zip this one out. There we go. Now we can get this bracket out. It comes with the igniter. Notice at the bottom there's this little tab right here. My screwdriver is. It fits into a slot right here, so I pulled that away from the slot, pull out the igniter, and that one looks pretty healthy, but we'll go ahead and change it while we have it. So I have to remove this one screw. I think it's also the 5/16. And again, the igniter's probably going to go for 5 to 8 years before you have to replace it. So that's 5/16. Go off the long screw. This comes out. Let's put the new one in reverse order. So the new one comes in this plastic protective case. By the way, you don't want to touch these elements. They're very fragile, and also the oil on your skin can kind of create a problem when these heat up, so it's better not to touch them. It comes with a new screw and a couple of porcelain wire nuts if you need them, but we'll just use the old screw. So this is just going to fit right back in there. Add that screw in there. You can see you got like little ridges here that keep it from moving around. Put that screw back. Okay, that's on there tight. Alright, so this is going to go back in. This tab is going to have to fit into a slot in there. So wiggle it on in. Just be careful because these elements are really delicate. If they hit anything, they can break. Old one to the new one. Pretty similar. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but the newer one that metal has a much more sparkle to it than the older one. Otherwise pretty similar. So I'm going to see if we can get that back into that little tab. There we go. And I'm all set. So now I just want to add that screw to hold it in. 5/16. I'm going to start it by hand. Yeah, so people usually don't know about the igniter, how important that is to change it, because if it's not working anymore, if it's worn out, the resistance value is wrong when it heats up, and it won't let the gas flow, or it'll cut the gas out too early. And it's pretty easy to change. Okay, so that's in there tight. Just got to remember to reconnect this one. Got it. Okay, so far we cleaned it up. Got the motor spinning good, nice and clean. We changed out the primary secondary coil assembly here, which is good. Changed out the igniter, and usually you don't have to change this thing. This is called flame sensor, and that helps the dryer to know that the igniter is hot enough. There's a flame, and it can send a signal based on that. But I don't really remember a time when those things have worn out, so I don't think you have to replace it. If you did, it's easy. Just I think one screw here and one tab at the bottom, it pops right out. These are very inexpensive on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description, but they're called flame sensors. There's 2 electrical connectors. We'll leave that alone because it's so rare that that goes out. But if you notice that your support rollers here are making like a thumping sound when the dryer turns, or they're making a high-pitched sound, it means they're worn out. And they come on a post when you buy the kit. It comes with a new post and a new wheel. In my experience though, usually don't have to replace the post. I mean, if you look at yours and you can tell that it's not round anymore, it's more oblong, then it should be changed. But typically what happens is the softer metal of the bearing on the roller wears out, and that's the only part you have to change. So let's go over changing this. We just have to get this little heat shield out of here first by removing these 2 5/16. Here's the first 5/16. Second one. Okay. Lift up the heat shield. There's a little tab that goes into the manifold, or into the firewall. Get that out. And now you got one 5/16 down here too. You gotta get that out. Same kind of screw. And then this thing is held on just by friction. So you just want to wiggle it towards you. Might need to use a pair of pliers to give you a little more leverage to get this part off. We've got a little bit of overkill here to hold on to this roller wheel. You really only need this piece here. They have this extra piece, so if you want to get this off, all you got to do is use your flathead screwdriver, or you could use a pair of pliers. You just kind of wiggle this thing off. It's just put on by friction. You do want to keep that though, because your new kit may not have a new one. I'm going to put that back. Now this will slide off. Now to get the wheel off, the support roller, you want to pry up a little bit on this piece of plastic so you can get it over this lip. Comes off. Now this should slide off, and then you can keep this part on. You don't have to remove it. Just clean up this bearing. This one looks pretty good. It doesn't look all worn out inside. We'll go ahead and replace it since we have the part with us. But usually you do not have to replace this post unless it's kind of worn out. To get this off though, it's not hard. You just have to take off the back cover and you can just spin this off, no big deal, but it's unusual that you have to replace these. By the way, these are designed to not need any lubrication, so you don't have to put any grease or any kind of oil. In fact, they say that if you do put oil, you probably will attract more lint and it may actually wear out faster. So these are just designed to not need that. Let's put a new one on. Here's the old one, here's the new one. You can just see there's like a little powder on the brand new rubber. Otherwise, if you look inside, the bearing surfaces look about the same. So in my opinion, I would say that this one is not worn out, pretty new. But again, we'll just go over how to change it. We'll pop this back on. And it should spin really easily. And then we're going to use a new one of these little guys. You don't have to, but it'll fit a little tighter. So I'm going to push it over. And I'm going to just push it up over this rim. It'll lock into place. I'm going to put this thing back on. I'll put this friction piece back on. You notice it's kind of a cone shape, and the big wide side goes toward the back of the dryer, and the smaller side, or the slope side, comes towards you, toward the front. Just going to push that on until it won't go any further. Got it. Now we're going to put that little screw back. Hold that in at the bottom, and we'll put the heat shield back. By the way, I have noticed that if one of these guys is going to wear out earlier than the other one, it's usually this one, because this is taking, I think, a little bit more of the weight. Notice it's more at the bottom, so there's more gravity, more weight from the wet clothing coming down on that one. Put this back in. Screw in. Okay, got it. So there's the old one, still in pretty good shape though. I do have a new one of these. This one seems to be okay, just kind of rubber buildup. Let's go ahead and change it out though. So remember, we go up, then back, come out. New one, in, and then down. If you notice, there's two of these arrangements too. There's one in the front, one in the back. The one in the front is the one you want to use, close to this, because the belt's going to go underneath this and then over here, the motor pulley. So we're going to get this guy off. We'll replace it. Screwdriver to help me start it. There we go. Okay, get it over the rim. There we go. This comes off. Put on a new one. Spins good. Put on a new one of these retaining clips. Push it on until it won't go any further. Yeah, got it. Okay, so for the inside, we're almost done. Just got to put this heat shield back in. So a little tab right here goes into the firewall, and then have those two screws that hold it in. Bottom one, top one. Okay, looks pretty good. I think we are done with the things that you need to do to renovate a gas dryer, Series 70 or Series 80. There's also a Series 90, and it's even a newer one, but it's really the same thing, same kind of components. The only thing I've seen really change over the years would be this assembly. You know, it's connected now. It's two pieces connected as one. And for many years, it was just two round solenoids independent of each other. But it is good. If you ever have to think you want to replace the primary or the secondary, always good to do them together as pairs. You save time, because if one's going out, the other one's probably going out too. And that's about it. We can clean up the inside a little bit more. This is one of the bearing surfaces here that the dryer rubs on. It looks really good. But mainly the weight is held by these support wheels. And the front of the dryer drum has these plastic bearing surfaces. And they rub on a felt surface on the front bearing. And you can get these if you ever need them, but it's rare that these, I don't think I've ever seen these break or wear out. So really good dryers. We will, though, today replace this belt because it's a bit older, and if you look at it, if you peel it back, you can see little tiny micro cracks. It just means that the rubber is not as supple as it was at one time, and it's, you know, it's at some point it'll break. I bet it's 2 or 3 years from now, but let's go ahead and replace it. There's also this back piece here that is a way to keep the heat in but allow the drum to spin. Kind of seals the heat in. It's made of cloth or felt, and if that gets ripped or if it's getting worn out, you can get that pretty cheaply and put a new one on. It just uses some contact cement to hold it on. Pretty easy. So let's go ahead and put the drum back in and we'll replace the belt. So here's the old belt, which is still in pretty good shape. Here's the new one. So the rubber feels very soft and supple. This is a little dried out. Probably doesn't show up on camera, but let's see. This one doesn't have any cracks in it. This one has little micro cracks everywhere. So this one, you know, this being new, will last a lot longer. Let's put on the new one. So we're going to turn it so that the cloth side faces out. Go ahead and put that over the drum. I kind of use this thing to help me lift the drums back into the dryer. I'll line it up back over the same line where it was. You can kind of see the old line. That up, and we're gonna make this cloth side go in first. Plastic one is towards you. It's like an opening in the frame. So we want to feed it into that opening. And you want to get this part to go into the rollers, the 2 rollers. So you kind of set it down on the rollers, push it in. And then what you want to do is turn it a few times. You're making sure that this felt piece is not crimped in. Like you can see, we're coming up on a section where it's crimped. So I just pull it back and then I fix that. I need that to form a good seal. There's another one where it's crimped. So I come out, push it back in. Once we get it right, then I'm going to lay down, get closer. So used to doing this now, I can just do it without help, but if you're new to doing this, you might put something like this underneath this drum, kind of hold it up where you want it, like that. Makes it a little bit easier to put on the belt. With my left hand, I'm pushing the loop underneath this idler wheel. I'm pushing the idler wheel to my right. My right hand has grabbed the loop of the belt. I'm going to feed it up over the motor pulley. That. And the idler wheel is keeping tension on the belt. I'm going to get this thing out of there. Now I'm going to turn this a couple of times to make sure the belt's lined up. Turning to my left, counterclockwise. Make a few revolutions just to make sure that the belt's not going to fall off. You put it all back together and you don't do this step, possible the belt will slide off and you have to open it back up. This will save you a little time. Make sure this feeds over there nice. So I did about 2 revolutions. Now I'll put on the front panel. The front panel has a hook here and a hook here. And I gotta lift the panel up and then drop it down on these hooks. There's a little opening on the front panel on the metal. It's gonna go up, over, and then down onto these guys. And there's 2 screws we'll put in here to hold it in. This is probably the only difficult part of this whole procedure. We got to get this plastic bearing surface on top of this felt, and we're going to lift the whole thing up and push in so that this square opening fits on top of that hook on both sides. Then we're okay. Then we just add a screw into here and one over here. Let's see if we can do it. So we're going to feed this onto the felt bearing, get the whole thing close in, kind of line up the sides, eyeball it, wiggle it around, and I'm going to lift up a little bit and see if I can slide it up higher than it was initially and drop it down on those hooks. Just be patient. That one looks like it locked in on the right side. Now I'm on the left side. I'm going to lift it, line it up, and then drop it down. And I'm going to lift this up a little bit because it slid down. There we go. Now it's on top of the bearing. We're good. So we're all set to go. We're going to add the screw in here. We'll add the screw in here, and then we'll put on these. Put this back on. Almost done. Sometimes these little clips come off. One came off on this side. I'm going to slide this back in. It's kind of spring loaded. It should just lock in. Slide it back in over that hole. There we go. That's what that screw locks into. Add those screws back in. It's kind of a simple dryer. It comes apart quickly. Well thought out. And I think that's why they last so long. Simple. And the parts are really cheap. A lot of times people ask me, they say, well, Scott, my dryer's broken, beyond repair. Should I get a new one? What should I get? And I tell them, well, if you can find an old series 70 or 80 that's in good shape, I would get that. And I've seen them a lot on Craigslist where they offer them, kind of like we did today, where they rebuild them and they sell them for about $200 to $250. And you can get like a 1-year warranty. I think you have to pay a little bit more for the warranty, but the warranty just says, you know, if something goes wrong, they'll come out and repair it for you or replace it. There's the next screw. Tighten that up. But again, ours lasted like 22 years, so they're really good. Really like working on these too. So I'll just put this connector back for the door switch. Get locked in there. Got it. Tab on there. So now I'm going to close the top, and these 2 clips will go up and lock that on. So I'm going to push down. Let those lock in the top. There's that side. That side. You ever have to get in? Oh, I gotta put a couple of Phillips head screws back here. Let's do that. Screw in. Be careful you don't drop the screw in the slot. You can even put a rag in there to prevent that. Just hold it with my finger. There we go. If you ever have to get into here to replace the timer or any of these switches, use a paint scraper to press in. That helps that lift up. Do the same on the other side. There we go. And you might have to change some of these components, like you have the dryer timer, some of these switches. This is that moisture sensor thing that we saw earlier. And you can get these, put a link for this part in the description below too. This thing is just a little circuit board that comes off. These resistors can get burned out over the years, and you can get a new one of these guys. There's also a tech sheet in here that gives you information on some tests you can do and information about the dryer. So to put this back, you just have to feed these rubber tabs back in there and then push down. Once you get everything in position, push it down. Same on the other side. All set. And we're going to put the filter back in. Right. We're going to go ahead and plug it in and give it a little test. I haven't plugged this one in yet, so hoping it does work. So if your dryer won't heat, one thing you can do is take off this little inspection tab, and then we can stare in there. When we start it, we should see the igniter glowing. Let's try it. Push this in. Motor sounds good. It's the first time we had this one on. It's spinning really smoothly. We'll look in there and see if we see an igniter glowing. Yeah, I do see an igniter glowing. You guys can see that too. So we did see an igniter glowing. We don't have gas going to this one, otherwise we'd see a big flame come out of there. But it sounds really smooth. Open it up. And even after you stop it, it should keep spinning for a little bit. The lights looks good. This is on the Whirlpool model here is a W, G as in George, D as in dog, 5000, D as in dog, W3. That's the model number. Yeah, it's a good dryer. So I got a feeling this is going to last maybe 10-15 years more. Watching our video, and please subscribe to our channel when you get a chance, and also click the little bell notification button so we can send you weekly videos on all the different ways of fixing appliances around your home and saving you lots of money. So thanks again for watching, and please also press the like button for our video if this was helpful to you. Feel free to contact me at the email listed below, which is scottthefixitguy@yahoo.com, with any of your questions.